Hey guys, welcome to the shop. My name is Christian Tierno and I'm the owner and operator of Tierno Woodworking. We're a custom cabinetry shop in Bluffton, South Carolina, but today I actually wanted to review the machine behind me here, specifically the Maksiwa BMS 1600 IR, which is a compact sliding table saw with a 5-foot slide. And the purpose of this video today is to hopefully shed a little bit more light on this machine, but more specifically from a user's standpoint, because when I went down the old rabbit hole of doing my research and looking to upgrade into a sliding table saw, coming from my traditional cabinet saw, which is on the back side here, I found very limited information on this specific machine, and it was a machine that I was very interested in based on the price point and specifications. It felt like a good fit, but if you're anything like me, although I like to do my apples to apples comparisons and specs from one machine to another, I really like to hear a user's perspective, and more specifically somebody that's in a similar setting as I am, which means somebody that's actually doing this for a living, running the machine day in and day out and keeping their lights on with it, versus maybe somebody that's in their garage and doing this as a weekend warrior type thing, and they're using the machine periodically, because to me those are very different perspectives. So today that's going to be the purpose of this video, and I'm going to go over the things that I like, some of the things that I don't like, and then I'm just going to kind of give you my general overview and if it's a machine that I would in fact recommend and put in my shop, again knowing what I know now. So without further ado, let's get right on into it. So I did want to share with you guys the unboxing and show you exactly how this came created, but I do want to apologize. As you can see, this was not shot for YouTube. Originally, I shot this content for Instagram, and it's the only footage that I have of it. And although this is not in the correct format, I figured it was worth sharing anyway because, well, it serves the purpose. So there were 3 boxes total that were freighted to my shop, and in the first box is the overarm dust collection. You can see here is the shroud, and next I'm going to pull out the actual overarm extension, which bolts to the main table. So at this point, I'm starting to get pretty excited because this is the biggest machine that I've added to the shop to date. And if you're somebody that started a cabinet shop from nothing, you can appreciate the progression, the grind, and everything that it takes to grow your skill set, your business, your client base, and to acquire machinery like this. And I started out in my garage with a simple Cobalt job site table saw from Lowe's, and I actually used a sandbag to hold it down because it was quite wobbly. So needless to say, this was one of those moments that was pretty special and a big moment in my journey. But in the main crate here, you could see that, well, I'm new boot goofing, I guess. That was the beefy rip fence guide. But the main machine, as well as several other components for the slide machine, are in there, and they did come with a full tool set, which was nice. And the next crate is the slide itself. Again, this is a 5-foot slide, and again, everything has been packaged really well. This is the second machine that I've gotten from Maksiwa with no hiccups during shipping. So I'm not going to show the assembly process itself because Maksiwa does provide a video for that on both their website and YouTube channel, which you can go check out. But I will say, generally speaking, the assembly was pretty straightforward. Anytime you're assembling machinery like this, it's definitely going to take some time and patience, and calibration at times can be hair pulling. I did use a dial indicator, and I got everything within, I want to say, 5/1000ths of an inch, which for my needs, I thought that was more than sufficient. In addition to that, the slide right out of the box, once I bolted it to the table, it appears as though that was something that was pre-calibrated because the slide was perfect in correlation to the blade. I just had to get the fence squared up and the rip fence. All right, so let's talk specifications. And to do so, I'm just going to walk front to back in the machine and just kind of rattle through the different specs. So starting over on the cross-cut fence, you can see that they provide 2 flip stops. These are pretty robust. I've had no issues or deflection with them per se. This is the locking knob for the telescoping fence, which slides out over here. Let's see, max capacity. I'm going to take this out so that I can show you guys. Now, max capacity, it says 92 inches. I would say that's a stretch because at that point, you're all the way at the end of this and you really don't have much to lock onto. So you can see my locking knob is at the end of the main onboard fence here, and we're at roughly 90 inches. So again, you could stretch that, but at that point, you really don't have much to bite onto here, and you're going to get a little bit wonky on the back end there. So moving on to, I guess, what you can call the support that's attached to the sliding carriage itself. You can see that we have a rule here, and that's for your angles if you want to tilt the fence back and cut an angle that way. That's not something that I've personally done, but nonetheless, you do have the option of doing so. So moving on, you can see that they do include a hold down for the front. And for the back, they provide this wedge style clamp. So moving on to the slide itself, again, this is a compact sliding table saw. So this is a 5-foot slide, which does enable you to cross cut full sheets of plywood. However, being it's 5 foot, you would not be able to rip a full sheet on the slide. On the slide itself, you're also going to see these two T-tracks here. You can see that I've added an aftermarket hold down, and that's also what their provided hold downs secure into. On the back of the slide, you have a handle as well as a locking knob, and you could essentially lock it anywhere along its travel point. And you can see those are the ridges that it locks into, and they go from here to the back. So again, there's plenty of locking points there. On the very back, you can see that it has a trough, which I find to be very handy. I often store pencils, a tape measure, or my rule in here. So moving over to the control panel, if you will, on the back side here, we have our main power kill switch. I'm just going to engage that. Now you can see that we have an indicator light showing that we do in fact have that switch on and there's power to the machine. We have our emergency kill there. If you twist that, it pops up, and now we're able to turn the machine on. So here is the start and stop for the main 5 horsepower motor. This is the start and stop for the 1 horsepower scoring motor. And that's what that looks like in real time. Moving on, you can see that we do have a digital display here, and that is for the angle finder. If you pop this little handle out and loosen this, you can go ahead and change your angle. Now, I have found this to be very accurate right out of the box, and it is a feature that I have used many times when cutting miters. Now, just to show you, I did lock the machine out so the power is off, but to access the blades, you can see we have this little shroud here. There's a little nut that you simply slide up, and you can now pull that back and you have access to your blades. So once you pull that down, you can see that we have a 12-inch main blade with a riving knife in the front, and then we have our scoring blade in the back. Now, this did come with both blades. This is the stock scoring blade. The scoring blade is really not something that I use often in my shop, although I have deployed it at times, and it works and does what it needs to, and it is adjustable. The 12-inch blade, however, you can see I did change out, and I actually just changed it out recently, and I was using the stock blade for quite a while, and it was decent enough to get me by until I finally went ahead and put a new blade on there. So that's that. Overhead, you will notice that we have a pretty substantial dust shroud slash guard. It does include a laser. This is adjustable, and there is a spring and some adjustments here to bring that up and down. If you wanted to move the dust shroud out of the way, we have this point here where you can pull this lever back and you can go ahead and push this out of the way. Now, you'll notice here that the tubing itself acts as the ducting, if you will, for the dust collection. So you have your pipe, it goes into here, the dust will travel right through the actual pipe itself, and then on the back end we have a drop for another 4-inch pipe. For the most part, I have always kept this engaged, more so for the safety of keeping the blade guard. I'll double back in the dust collection. Moving on, they do include a pretty robust rip fence here. This bar is quite heavy. We have our rip fence that has an extrusion, which can be flipped on its side or in the vertical position as you see now. There is micro adjustment here. You lock it in place there. You can see that there is a digital readout as well as a traditional style tape. So moving on to the back of the machine, we have 2 more adjustment knobs here. And this specific one is for the height adjustment on the main blade, and this is the height adjustment for the scoring blade, which you can see now is popping out a bit. So you can adjust this up and down, and then you could spin that to lock that in place. They also did include a push stick, which needless to say I've never used, but they also include a little hanger there, so if I ever need it, it is there. So looking at the badge on the backside of the machine, again, we can see that we have a 5 horsepower main motor, a 1 horsepower scoring motor. This is in fact a one-phase machine at 220 volts, and it runs on 22 amps. So you do need a larger breaker. So just below and to the side of that badge, you can see that we have our stub out here for the power cord. The power cord is not included with this machine. You do have to provide your own, which I had my electrician run the power for this and hook up the cord. You can see that we have our outlet up there, and that is one of those locking style plugs. So on the side of the machine, we also have a access panel for the main components of the machine, the motor and everything that's in the main part. And then over here we have another access panel, and that's for the wiring that goes over to the control panel. Something that is definitely worth highlighting, especially in my shop. The floor is like the craters in the moon in here. You can see that we have adjustable leveling feet, which certainly came in handy when setting this machine up and trying to get it in line with my other saw. So the next thing I want to do is kind of give you guys a closer look at exactly how I have this set up in my shop, because again, I have a small shop, and being able to fit this into my small footprint was absolutely critical, and was again the leading reason for buying a compact sliding table saw. So a couple of things worth noting here. Number one, you could see that my slide actually goes right over my workbench, and again, I just had to make the space work for me, and that's how we did that. So you can see that I kind of married the two saws here, and I made an in-feed, out-feed table, a L-shaped piece. This is just some plywood with some solid maple nosing. So underneath here, you could see that definitely nothing fancy as far as the in-feed, out-feed goes. There was 2 bolts that were already pre-tapped into the cast top, and that was for the in-feed, out-feed that they provide, which obviously I'm not utilizing, but so that's what I used to bolt this in. On the extension that they include for the other side, you can see I tapped my own holes to screw this in, and then over here I kind of just have this jury rigged and screwed in any way I was able to. Again, something that I'm going to revisit in the future, but for now it shall suffice. Let's take a look at this little boom arm here. So again, this is the support for the overarm dust collection, and it bolts into the main cabinet here, and there is set screws, you can see 4 of them, to be able to adjust this in and out, to be able to line things up. That's something I'm going to double back on later. So coming to the back side of the machine and the front side of my cabinet saw, just to kind of give you a look at how I have this set up, I did have to make a little platform to raise this saw so that I can get it in plane with this, as well as to clear my current workbench, which was already built, and I wasn't trying to rebuild that again, something I'll revisit at some point. The only other thing worth mentioning, if you wanted to get into a similar scenario, overall this has worked out wonderfully for me. This is mostly a rip saw at this point, and typically I'm ripping narrower stock. That being said, you can see that the overhead dust arm definitely impedes me from having stock that's going to be to the left of my blade. So currently I want to say I have about 8 inches. Alright guys, so let's talk pros and cons. And as far as I'm concerned, there's pros and cons to every conversation and every machine purchase, and often that's subjective to the person or shop needs. But I think it's also important to keep perspective on price points, because often I see unfair comparisons on machinery or other items, you know, and they're comparing a Ferrari-like item to a Honda-like item, and the price point is drastically different. So keep in mind that this is at the low end of the budget spectrum. This is what I would deem as an entryway slider, or, you know, in my case it's an entryway slider, but it's also very much contingent upon my space. So perspective. But Number one on the pro side of things would be the fact that this is a compact slider. That was a non-negotiable for me. I needed something that could fit within my footprint, but that was also capable. So that brings me to number two, is that being that it is a compact slider, it fits in here, but it is capable. This has a 5 horsepower motor, which is more than sufficient for any of the work that I'm doing in the shop. In fact, it's the same motor and setup that they have in their full-size version, the 3200 IR. So size and capability are definitely going to be the first two. I guess to piggyback and roll into number three, speaking about capability, is the fact that I have a healthy amount of crosscut capacity. Again, I'd say comfortably 90 inches, but you could stretch that. So that's a huge perk for me. Coming from my sliding attachment, that only gave me 6 foot. I think it was like 60 inches or something like that. And often with my specific projects, and more specifically living room built-ins, I'm often going above that 5 foot mark. And that was one of the final kind of reasons that I decided to move on to a slider, is the fact that just about every project that I did, I was beyond the capability of the crosscut slider that I had attached to my saw. And although it functioned pretty well, again, there were some limitations, and that was one of them. So now, again, for the most part, this is well within, I'd say, 90% of the crosscuts that I'm trying to do in my shop. So that would be number three. Number four, again, capability. I do have the ability to put a full sheet of plywood on this machine and crosscut, which means that I'm really no longer reaching for my track saw, because before I was taking my sheet goods, bringing them over to my workbench, and I was breaking them into smaller, more manageable pieces, and then cutting them up on the slider attachment and or the table saw with the rip fence. So the ability to bring a full sheet over to the saw and cross cut it and skip that extra step is obviously a huge benefit for me. Time is money. It allows me to be more productive with my time, and it makes the time in the shop a little bit more enjoyable because I'm having to fuss less with things. And I enjoy what I do. I enjoy making sawdust. I enjoy running the machines. So that's certainly a perk for me on both ends of that. Say the next pro, and we're up to number 5, I believe, would be the fact that this has a digital readout for the angle. And that's something that, from what I've seen, the competitors do not have in the compact version or at this price point. And it's been a benefit for me. It's something that I utilize every single time that I'm cutting my miters, which I am often doing for floating shelves and things of that nature. And I do find it to be accurate, to the point where I'm no longer checking the blade. I'm just relying on the readout, and I have found that to be more than sufficient for my needs. Moving on, number 6 would probably be the leveling feet. I think their first edition of this specific saw did not have leveling feet, if I recall. I'm not sure if the other saws have leveling feet. Certainly something that you can navigate and get around, but the fact that it's included and it's one less thing I had to worry about was certainly a benefit when setting up, and obviously when using it now that it's in its final resting position. So moving on, and this is actually going to be something that I'm going to list in the pro side and the con side, strangely enough, is the fact that this has a substantial overhead dust collection slash guard. And honestly, I'm using it more for guard purposes, and I'm going to double back in that in the con side here in a minute. But I would say that it's a pro that it has this. This is a upgrade from their original rendition of this saw, which had a much simpler, less robust overhead dust arm. And again, the competitors, from what I've seen, they don't offer anything this substantial. They're just kind of more janky dust shrouds. So for the most part, I would say that kind of sums up my pro side of things. Overall, I've been very happy with the build quality. This machine has done exactly what I needed and expected it to do, and it's done it relatively well. The slide performs very well. It's a nice, smooth gliding action that hasn't changed since day one. And overall, it's been a nice saw. It hasn't bogged down. I can cut through anything that I need. I'm getting very, very accurate cuts. Right out of the box, the slide was set up and calibrated. I did have to calibrate, the cross-cut fence as well as the rip fence, but this was kind of, I think, a bigger hurdle than the other two. So that was nice. And again, overall, I've been very happy. Maksiwa is a machinery brand that I've spent money with before, and I've met their team. Again, I've been to their showroom. I've seen their machines at trade shows, and it's a company that I feel comfortable investing in the future. In fact, you know, their pocket hole machine is one of the next upgrades that I'd like to add to the shop. All right, let's move on to the con side of things. I think it's very important to be transparent. And again, like I said earlier, I think there's a pro and con side to any conversation and or machine, realistically, no matter where you are on the spectrum. And again, often that's somewhat subjective. But as far as cons go, let's go back over to the overarm dust collection. And I said that that was going to be something that was going to be on both the pro and con side, because on the pro side, again, it's there, it's substantial, it's something that I use, and I'm glad that it's there. That being said, I wish that there was some things that they tweaked a little bit. And can I be terribly upset about it at this price point and the fact that this is more than the competitors offer? I'm not sure. I'll let you be the judge of that. But I do find that the adjustments on this were very difficult. Out of the box, I really had to crank down on all those set screws. In fact, I maxed them out to even get things relatively close. I would have liked this to be more fine-tuned, in line with the blade better. It is a bit wobbly. The second thing is, and I don't know if this is specific to my dust collection, this is a small shop, and you can see that my piping is nothing special. I just have some janky flex pipe. I got a 2 horsepower dust collector back there, which I've had for quite a while, and it's been an exceptional dust collector for my shop needs. It's never failed me yet, and it has great suction. I don't have any issues with the other machines or as far as suction goes. And let me just say, table saws are notorious for making dust. The saw stop, you know, my dust collection is not terribly great either. There's still a little bit to be desired there. So again, relative, but the below deck dust collection I find to be sufficient. The overarm, when I have them both open, it almost seems as though they counteract each other, and I'm getting poorer quality with both open versus just using the main dust collection. So the last thing worth mentioning as far as I'm concerned on the con side of things is this hold down. And I know often from what I hear, people that are purchasing sliding table saws, they kind of just write off the hold downs altogether. But at first I was utilizing it. In fact, the original one, this is the second one that I've used, and they sent me this. The first one, it worked, and I really didn't have any issues with it actually, but the metal that was used for the little tab, like, you know, dovetail type piece that slides into the T-track that this locks into, it broke. And honestly, I'm like a bull in a china shop sometimes, and I think I just tightened down on it too tightly, and over time it cracked. And I reached out to Maksiwa. They promptly sent me another one, which was a slightly different version than the original one that it came with. And this one is also broken. I could still use it, but there was a knob on the back here that had broken, and I could probably fix it, but I've just kind of, at this point, I'm just like, I'm kind of just moving on. And when you lock this down, there's play in this way, front to back, side to side, and this little piece here. And I have found parts to move on me at times. And yeah, so take it for what it's worth. See if you like it. You can see that I added my own stop here, an aftermarket one, and for me, I have found that to work better. But in the grand scheme of things, these are very, very minor things, and but nonetheless worth mentioning. All right, guys, so that's the Maksiwa BMS 1600 IR in a nutshell. I think at this point I've given you a pretty comprehensive review. Now, moving on to the million-dollar question, would I recommend it to other shops? And knowing what I know now, would I add this machine to my shop again? And the answer to both those questions is absolutely yes. This machine has been a fantastic addition to the shop. It's made my time in here more productive and more enjoyable. It's done everything that I've needed it to do, and I think that the value is there. I think for the price point is a good bang for your buck. There's features that set it apart from some of the other competitors. Overall, I've had a great experience with Maksiwa as a whole, as well as this specific machine. Again, this is number 3 as far as Maksiwa machines that I own, and I do have others that I plan to add in the future. And yeah, they come with a 2-year warranty. I've dealt with customer service a couple times, and what experience I have had with customer service has been positive. So, you know, at this point, I really have no reason to say no. You know, is there some little things that I'd like to see tweaked? I mean, sure, as I mentioned earlier, I think that's always going to be the case no matter what you're looking at. But at the end of the day, those are very, very minor points, and often things that don't even cross my mind when I'm running the machine, because again, they're that minor. But overall, the machine functions well, it slides well, it's very accurate, it does what I need. So, is it going to be the best, option for you and your specific shop needs? I don't know. That's for you to decide, but hopefully the information that I provided for you today makes that decision a little bit easier. That's the Maksiwa BMS 1600 IR, guys. I hope that shed some light on many questions that you may have had. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. As always, I appreciate you guys for watching. Like and subscribe. There's going to be a lot more content coming on this channel, including other tool reviews, many of which you guys have asked for on my Instagram page. And if you're not checking me out over there, please go ahead and give us a follow. But as always, I appreciate you guys. I'll see you on the next one.